Salutations, Swifters! It's Prof G, and it's time to start building the Word Garden app. So first, let's set up our Word Garden project file. We'll download some assets from the assets catalog that I've put on the internet for you. I'll give you a bit more background on image resolution size and how you can import different size images into Xcode, and then we'll present most of the interface setup as a challenge. Since you already know how to do most of these steps, you should be able to do them on your own, but we will offer a step-by-step solution at the end of the video too. We'll also offer some insight on dealing with Xcode's user interface warnings and errors, and we'll offer a first look at hugging priority. For now, let's go ahead and launch Xcode. Select Create a new Xcode project. Single View App, click Next. We'll give this the product name Word Garden, and again, this is going to be a Storyboard app, not a Swift UI app, so make sure Storyboard is selected in your user interface. Click Next. I'm going to save mine to the desktop, click Create, and double-click on the title bar to go full screen. Now let's grab those assets from the Google Drive so you can open up a browser and head over to the URL bit.ly/word-garden-app, all lowercase. That'll bring up this Google Drive, highlight all three folders, right-click, select Download. Google will take more time than shown here to zip these files up. Your browser might ask you to save the files. If so, you can give it a name. I'm just going to call mine word-garden-app-files and save mine to the desktop. If your browser doesn't ask you to save, then it's probably saved it to the Downloads folder. It's probably named it something strange, but that's okay. You'll get the files when you double-click on the zip. So find and double-click that zip file. That will decompress into a folder that's got the other three folders that you just downloaded. You don't need the zip file anymore, so you can throw that into the trash. Open up the folder you just downloaded. You can see that you've got the three folders in here for the app icon set, the sounds, and the images. I'm going to option click to highlight all three of these. Head back into Xcode into my Word Garden project. I'm going to click on the Assets catalog in the Project Navigator. You can see that you've got an app icon set up top, and it's got nothing in it. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to press the Delete key to delete that. Now I've got nothing in my Assets catalog. Then I'll take these three highlighted folders and drag them into my Assets catalog. Once I'm in the Assets catalog, I'll let go, and the three folders are copied over. Perfect. If you want, you can click on these to check them out. The app icon shows all of the different icon sizes for when you install your app on a device. I created these using Make App Icon. In Flower Sounds, there's 4 named MP3 files for sounds to play during the game. If you click on the images, you can see the different images that are going to show. Flower 0 is the wilted stem that shows up if you have 0 guesses remaining. Flower 8 is the flower that shows up with all 8 petals when you first start. And we'll use these numbered wilt images to create a very simple animation that makes the petals look like they're turning brown just before a petal disappears after a wrong guess. Now the reason you see 3 images, 1x, 2x, and 3x, is because Apple has improved the resolution of its devices over the years with the Retina and Super Retina displays, and as a developer you might design an app with an image that's, say, 100 by 100 points in size, but iOS will automatically detect if the device can show a higher image resolution, and if a higher res image is available in the images in your asset catalog, it will automatically use that one. And Apple's got lots of information online that they're constantly updating with the resolutions of different devices if you want to learn more. Here's an image of the 1x, 2x, and 3x sized leaves for Word Garden. Now I've blown these up so that you can see the 1x view shows pixelated or jaggy edges and the 3x view looks really smooth. So even though an app might be designed with a single image view size, let's say that's 100 by 100, if your asset catalog has 3 separate files, one at standard, one at 2x, and one at 3x, an original device would show the 1x image. Retina devices will use the 2x, Super Retina the 3x, and on those devices, the image will look a lot nicer. So even though you might hear developers refer to items on screen as being sized in pixels, and old-timers like me make that mistake a lot, that's not correct. A pixel is just a dot on a screen, while Retina and Super Retina devices will have much larger pixel densities per point. This website, The Ultimate Guide to iPhone Resolutions, shows this in action. Even though you might see devices that have the same point resolution in terms of their screen sizes, devices that have Super Retina displays can show a much higher resolution image than the devices that don't. Now, if you ever want to include images in your app and support different resolutions, all you need to do is name the files with the same name, but add at 2x and at 3x as the suffix at the end of the names for files that will be used on Retina and Super Retina devices. Now those are added right to the name, not as a dot extension after the name. And if we go over to our flower images folder in the Finder, you'll see that that's what I've done here. Now when you drag the folder over into Xcode, Xcode automatically organizes these files in our assets catalog catalog, grouping together the files with the same names but that were original size, 2x and 3x. By the way, one of the other things that you can do in the assets catalog is you can right-click on an item, and oftentimes there's a quick look feature. For example, if you right-click on an image, you can get a quick look of the image. You can also open it up in preview if you'd like to inspect it a little bit more. Quick look will also work with sounds. This just whets your appetite a little bit in terms of what's going on inside the assets catalog and how we can use different image resolutions to make our app look better. Now, when it comes to creating the user interface, you've already learned all of the techniques needed to do this on your own, so I'll present this as a challenge with everything you need to do listed on this slide, and after we pause and resume, I'll go over this just in case you get stuck or you want to review, and after we've completed the challenge, we'll create the IB outlets and the IB actions to finish off this video, then we'll be ready to code in the next video. Also, when we go over the solution, I'll point out some of the errors and warnings that Xcode gives us when we lay out the interface, what they mean, and how to silence them if you'd like. Now, we've already downloaded the assets and put them in our assets catalog. Now, we'll build the interface from top to bottom. The constraints and sizes below are sized for the original iPhone SE, so we'll work on the smallest iOS device that runs modern operating systems. And so we'll start at the top with these 4 labels here: word guessed 0, word missed 0, word remaining 0, and words in game 0. The 2 on the right are right justified. You'll put the top 2 labels in a horizontal stack view, the next 2 labels in a horizontal stack view as well, and then these 2 horizontal stack views will be put in a vertical stack view. Set the alignment and distribution to fill and fill for all 3 stack views. Only the vertical stack view should need constraining, and that should be at 4, 8, and 8, top, left, and right, and you can set the height to 31. Now the next label reads how many guesses to uncover the hidden word. That text should be 24 points, copperplate font, centered, constrain it, top, left, and center, 8, 16, and 16, and the height should be 80. And make sure that the text shows multiple lines so that it doesn't show the 3 dot ellipses at the end. The next label shows the user's guesses. There'll be dashes for each unguessed letter. Those dashes are going to change as the letters are guessed correctly, but for now we'll just put in 5 dashes separated by 4 spaces. Think the word Swift, S-W-I-F-T, but with 5 letters hidden with spaces in between. We'll keep the font the same, but we'll center the text in the label, and we'll constrain it top, left, right, 8, 16, 16, with a height of 21. These next 2 items that you see are in a horizontal stack view, but create them first. Now the thing on the left is something that you haven't used yet. It's a text field. It allows the user to enter text into our app, but you know how to find things in the library. So I'm sure that you can find that object and add it to your interface. Constrain it, height 34, width 30. Now it won't size right away when you set those 2 constraints, but that's okay. Things will look normal as soon as we add them to the stack view. And remember, if you get stuck, you can always forward ahead to the solution. Now you'll also have to set some attributes in the text field that you've never seen before, but you know how to get to the attributes inspector, so I'm sure that you can find them. So you want to find border style. This should be the default that's set that you see here, but if not, find that and change it. There are also 2 other attributes you want to look for, one that says correction and another that says spell checking. Both of those attributes should be set to no. Also, set the text alignment so that it's centered. Now, right next to the text field, you'll add a button that says guess a letter. Constrain this with a width of 150 and a height of 30. Now, again, you're not going to see these changes after setting the constraints, and you'll also probably see some little red lines that show up in Interface Builder. That's okay, because the next thing that you're going to do is highlight both the text field and the button, and then embed them both in a horizontal stack view, then constrain them so that the stack view is constrained 8 from the top, and it's also centered in the container. Then you should see things resize properly and the warnings will go away. Below that, you're going to add another button. This one will say play again. You want to constrain that 8 from the top, give it a width of 90, a height of 30, also center that in a container, and I also want you to find the attribute that says hidden. It'll just fade a little bit when hidden is selected, so you'll still be able to see it in Interface Builder, but when we run our app, the button will be hidden, and we'll talk about programmatically unhiding the button or making sure that it shows. Now, below that, there's yet another label. Initially, that one should say you made 0 guesses. We'll constrain that 8, 16, 16, top, left, and right. The height will be 74. Make sure that this can show multiple lines so that it's not cut off with ... at the end. And then below that, we'll have an image view, which is constrained 8, 0, 0, 0, top, left, right, bottom, and put the image flower 8 in there. So here's what things will look like on an iPhone SE. Up top, you see how things resize on a larger max size iPhone. Why don't you pause here, give this a shot on your own, and resume. Let's go over the solution. So in main storyboard, I'm going to click on View As and make sure that I'm designing on the original sized iPhone SE. We'll start by adding these 4 game status labels in the top. So I'll click on the library and drag a label over. I'll position it in the top left. I'll zoom my screen so I can see things a bit better. I'll put in the default text that says words guessed : 0. Click on the T to the right of the font and then change the font size to 12. Then with this label selected, press Command D to duplicate it. Put that second label just below the first label. I'll change the text so that it says words missed :0. Then I'll highlight both of these labels, duplicate them with a Command D, drag the labels over to the right, make the right side of these labels flush with the right margin, set their text alignment to right justified, stretch them out a little bit. The width isn't super important, just make sure that you've got enough space in there in case you have double or triple digit games. Then I'll draw a selection rectangle around just the two topmost labels. I'll go down to the lower right hand corner, select the Embed In icon, and select Embed In Stack View. The alignment changes, but we'll fix that in just a bit. Now highlight just the two labels below these, also go to Embed and embed these in a stack view too. Let's highlight both of those stack views. If you look over in the document outline, you can see that we've got two stack views there now, and we'll embed those in yet another stack view. Now we've got our two horizontal stack views in one vertical stack view. Again, our alignment isn't that good, but with this single stack view selected, we can go up to the Attributes Inspector. The default distribution should be fill. That's good, we want to keep it. And set our alignment to fill as well. That looks much better, so let's go ahead and set constraints now. Click on Add New Constraints. Top will be 4, the two sides will be 8 and 8. You should see the bright red connection lines to the top left and right as well. Also click on height, that should be about 31, and add 4 constraints. Things look much nicer. Down in View As, you can see how things will look on a Pro size device. Perfect resizing. We'll go back to the SE. Now under the stack view we'll have another label, so let's click on the library icon, drag a label over, position it just to the left and below the stack view that we just created, stretch it out margin to margin, give yourself a little bit of height, but don't worry too much about being precise because we'll set constraints in a minute. The static text that we'll type in will be how many guesses to uncover the hidden word, ? Let's set the alignment to centered, click on the T next to font, let's set the font to custom, we'll set the font family to copperplate, this is an all caps font. We'll set the size to 24 and click Done. We see our text is extending past the right edge of our label, but you know the lines trick. Let's go to the lines attribute and set that to 0. We're still a little squished in here, but we'll fix our constraints now too. So we'll click Add New Constraints. We'll set top, left, and right to 8, 16, and 16. Those are all highlighted with red lines. We'll also set the height to 80. Click Add 4 Constraints. Looks good. Let's go down here to View As and check things out on a max size device. Looks good. Back to iPhone SE. Now we see in the upper right hand corner of the document outline here that we've got a little red error ball. Let's click on that and see what's up. This isn't going to prevent our app from running, but Xcode will flag some things that it thinks that we should include in order to make sure that our app resizes properly on different device sizes. Now, even though we're not talking about localizing our app and changing the language systems, Xcode will pay attention to see the size of the labels and let you know, hey, we should make the label larger so that it can accommodate words that might be longer than the words you currently have in your app. Like German words, for example, are typically 50% larger than English words. We see this first option says Content Priority Ambiguity. We see the same thing down below. If you click on any of these items, you'll notice that the items that they're referring to are highlighted over on our storyboard. Let's click on this little red ball next to the top Content Priority Ambiguity problem. Xcode offers a suggestion as to what you should do here. It says decrease horizontal hugging of the label with word guessed 0 in it from 251 to 250 to make it grow before other views. There's no need for us to go into this in a great depth right now, but just know that setting the larger value for hugging priority indicates that we don't want the view to grow larger than its content. These priority numbers are 0 to 1000, and Apple uses them as tiebreakers. So if there are two things that are in conflict, Apple looks at the numbers to decide which one should get priority. So if we have two fixed label sizes, for example, and we're stretching out the stack view, which one should grow? Well, in our app, it doesn't really matter. We've got plenty of room in here, so I'm going to click Change Priority and accept Xcode suggestion. That error goes away. I've still got this other error here, so I'll click on the little red ball. I get the same kind of error up here as well, so I'll just click on Change Priority and allow Xcode to fix this too. No more errors, great. Now let's put in our text field, which is the text input object. We'll click on Library, search for text field. Here's the object. If you click this and then click on the Show Detail icon in the upper right-hand corner of the library, we can see Apple's description of the text field. It says that this can contain editable text, so this is one of two different objects where the user can actually enter text into our app. This is what we want. Click on this guy, drag it into your view controller, and release it just below the label with the dashed lines. Now let's set constraints. We'll set the width to 34. We'll set the height to 30. Click Add to Constraints. We see some red lines. We see Xcode doesn't change the constraints on the device. That's okay. Things will change when we add this in a stack view. We're going to stack it next to a button, so let's go up to the library, search for a button, drag that over, and put the button just to the right of the text field. I'll give myself a little more room for now. I'll type in guess a letter as the title for the button. I'll set the button's constraint so that the width is 150 and the height is 30. Add two constraints. Then I'm going to select both the text view and the button that I just added, go down to embed in, and embed these in a stack view. We can see that all of a sudden those constraints take effect. This is looking really good. By the way, my document outline has sort of lost its place, but one of the ways you can get back to where you were previously is just click off and then click back on main storyboard. I'm going to add constraints on this stack view, and I just want the top constraint set to be 8. We can see that that's going to be constrained relative to the label just above it. That's perfect. Add one constraint, but then we also want to center this horizontally, so click on Align, click on Center Horizontally in Container, add one constraint. Looking good. Now we're getting another warning in here in the upper right-hand corner of the document outline, so let's click on that and see what Xcode has to say. It says fixed with constraints may cause, and it's cut off a bit, but if you click on the yield sign, you see different options in here. But this second one refers to the point that I made earlier that some languages might have words that are larger than, in our case, the English that we've used inside these interface objects. So the second option here is the one that I like. It says this allows the label to extend in width for longer text. That sounds good. I'm going to click on this radio button and click on confirm, and the yield sign goes away. Now, since my app is going to be only in English, I actually didn't need to change that. It wouldn't have made a difference at all. Sometimes getting rid of the yield sign makes you feel good. If you want to do a quick check in View As, you can go down here, click to see how things would look on a max-sized device. Looks great. Go back to the SE. So far, so good. Next up, another button, so click on Library, drag the button over, center that just a little bit below the previous stack view. We're going to change the title of this button to Play Again. Let's add constraints, width of 90, height of 30, add two constraints. Then let's go ahead and click on Align, center this horizontally in Container, add one constraint. Looks good. The challenge instructions also mentioned that you should select the button's hidden attribute. So if you scroll down, even though we've never used this before, you can find it in the Attributes Inspector toward the bottom where it says Drawing. Click on Hidden. You'll notice that the button looks a little dimmed. If we did a build and run right now, we would see that the Play Again button would be completely hidden. We'll learn how to unhide it programmatically in a future video. And we see that we've got another warning over here, so let's click on that yield sign. We see it's the same kind of warning that we had before, warning us about languages that might have larger text in here. We'll click on this second object again, constrained to be greater than or equal to current width, and click on Confirm. Now I can click this arrow in the left of the document outline to get back to the typical hierarchy that I usually see. Then let's head over to the library. We'll drag down one more label. I'll plop it just below my Play Again button and stretch it out from side to side, hitting the two margins left and right. I'm going to change the label text to read, "You've made 0 guesses." Set the alignment to center. Set constraints to 8, 16, 16. I'll set the height to 74 and add 4 constraints. And it doesn't look like I'm going to have a problem with word wrapping in this line, but just for good measure, I'm going to click on it and then go up to the Attributes Inspector and make sure that the lines are set to 0. Now I'll click on Library. We're going to add an image view, search for that. I'll drag it onto my view controller, position it just below the label above it, and so that it's flush with the left side of the view controller, and drag the lower right-hand corner so that it's also even with the lower right-hand corner of the view controller. And when I add constraints, I'm going to set this to be 8 from the top, but 0, 0, and 0 from the two sides and the bottom of the view controller. Add 4 constraints. With the image view selected, I'm going to go up to the Attributes Inspector and pull down to select the image. I want flower number 8. Look at that, fresh as a daisy. That's how our app's going to start. Down in View As, one last check on a max-sized device. Looks great. Back to the SE. Oh, a couple more changes we want to make, so let's click back on our text field, and under the Attributes Inspector, we want to select this correction attribute, and we're going to set that to no. We don't want any auto-correction to take place as the user types in, and down here for spell checking, we're also going to set that to no. And the reason we're going to do that is, if we didn't, autocorrect might try to go ahead and correct what we're typing in. So if you typed, for example, an O, it's next to an I, so iOS might think, oh, that person probably wanted to type an I instead. That's not what we want to happen. We just fixed it. And I also noticed that we didn't change the default text for these rightmost labels in the stack view at the very top of the app, so let's do that really quickly. The one in the lower right should say words in game, and the one just above that should say words remaining. And you know what? I'm going to change one of the settings from the challenge. We initially set this label that has "you made 0 guesses" to a height of 74. And why don't we go ahead and get rid of the height restriction on that, because during the game, most of the time we're going to have just one line in here. Depending on the results of the game, we may have multiple lines and different text lengths in here. Now, if the height change is distracting, we may decide to change it yet again. But I think for now, it probably makes sense to try to maximize the space that we have for the flower. So the way we can get rid of a height constraint is with this label selected, we can go up to the size inspector. Then if you scroll down here, you can see that there's a vertical constraint where it says height equals 74. I'm just going to click that and press the delete key. Now that's gone. Xcode is giving me some red indicators, meaning that I'm missing some sort of constraint. First, let me take a look at the attributes inspector. Yep, our lines are indeed set to 0. That's what we want. So now to figure out why we're getting red lines, let's click on the little ball in the upper right-hand corner of the document outline. And this doesn't tell us too much, so let's click on the little red ball again. It says decrease vertical compression resistance of flower 8 from 750 to 749 to make it get clipped before the other views. I suppose that's what we want, so that should mean that our image view will change in size and the text label above it will be given priority. I'm pretty sure that's what we want to do because we want to be able to read the whole text label, and we're resizing our image because our image is set to aspect fit. Let's go ahead and click on change priority. No more errors, no more warnings. We're ready to add our outlets and our actions. Now, if you want, you can certainly pause here and treat this like a challenge. I think it should be pretty clear which of the interface objects are associated with these different IB outlet and IB action names, but I'm going to go ahead and solve this right now anyway if you'd rather follow along. So to create outlets and actions, we need to get in side-by-side assistant editor mode. I'm going to click first on viewcontroller.swift, then option click on main storyboard. I can hide the attribute inspector over on the right to give me more room. The first outlet I'm going to create is for the words guest label in the upper left-hand corner. And since my interface up top is kind of crowded because I've got the different stack views and these very small labels, I'm going to instead first click the label so that I can see it in the document outline and then control drag from this selected label name in the document outline. This makes it easier for me to tell that, yep, I've definitely got it. My rubber band forms. I'm going to let go just underneath the class definition line. Let's name this words guest label, lower camel case, click connect, and I'll speed up the rest because the procedure's the same. Now the one directly below this is the label in the upper right hand corner because they're in the same horizontal stack view, so we'll call that one words remaining label. I'll give myself some more room, then I'll click on the little exposure triangle to open up the stack view below this. Control drag over from this label I've highlighted here. That's the word missed label. You can see it selected. When I clicked it in the document outline, the little white handles are also showing around the label on the interface builder canvas. Control drag over. This one should be called words missed label. Then control drag from the one below. And just a quick note, you want to make sure that you drop the IB outlet in where there's a horizontal line. You don't want to drop it on top of another IB outlet where you get sort of this light blue selection rectangle here. That's not where we want to let it go. And you can see a little black note down there that says that you're going to connect to this outlet. That's not what we want. This is right. See how the message changed? It says insert an outlet, which is exactly what we want to do. Let it go right here. And we're going to call this one words in game. Click connect. All four of these labels have outlets. I'll get rid of the white space so all four of the labels are together in code. Then we need to control drag from this label with the underscores in it. We'll call this one word being revealed label. Then control drag from the text field. We'll call this guest letter text field. Then from the guess a letter button, we'll call that guess letter button. We'll call the IB outlet for the play again button. This label that says you've made 0 guesses, we'll call game status message label. And we'll call the image view flower image view. Now it's time for IB actions. They typically go at the end of the class, just before the last curly. We'll create one for the guess a letter button. We'll call that guess a letter button pressed. Make sure that we set the type to UI button. And we'll control drag over from play again, and we'll call this play again button pressed. Set that to UI button as well. We got all our outlets and actions. I can get out of assistant editor mode. I'm going to build and run on an iPhone 11 Pro. Speed up the launch so you don't have to wait for it. And this is looking nice. Even though we built on an iPhone SE on an 11 Pro, it looks perfect. Now, if I click in the text field, we don't see the keyboard show up. It might be showing up in your simulator. If the keyboard doesn't show up, you can go up here in the simulator. There's an I/O menu for input/output. You see there's a keyboard menu in here, and then you get a bunch of different selections. You usually want to connect the hardware keyboard on your Mac to act as if it's the iPhone keyboard. I have the check next to connect hardware keyboard, so mine's going to do that. Also, if you select this one that says toggle software keyboard, that'll make the iOS keyboard pop up. It's a good idea to do that because that's going to be what the app is going to look like when you run it on a real iOS device. And the shortcut next to it, Command K, is one worth memorizing because you'll use it a lot. Select this option, the keyboard animates from below. I can do Command K again, it'll disappear but it'll pop up again, and that's because the default behavior for iOS is to show the keyboard on the device when you're in a text input object, like a text field. Now clicking the button doesn't do anything, but in the next video we're going to learn how to dismiss the keyboard when you click on the button. For now, things are looking good. Since we've just finished the section, let's go ahead and push this to GitHub. We're going to have to create a new remote repository. So let's head back into Xcode, click on the stop button to stop the simulator, then click the source control navigator icon. That's the second icon from the very far left, right next to the project navigator. Right click on the folder that says Word Garden, pull down and select Create Word Garden Remote. If you've been following along with the previous videos, you've already got GitHub configured in Xcode. You can keep the repository name Word Garden. I've already got one on my site, so I'm going to call this one Word Garden-app. Put in whatever description you'd like, click Create. Now this says it's pushing up an initial commit, but if I go back to the project navigator, I can see that I've still got 3 M's that show that these 3 files have been modified. So that initial commit is essentially the empty project that was created when you created the brand new project. We haven't yet committed all of the subsequent work we've done in this video. Now the 3 M's that we have next to these 3 file names here say that we've modified those files since the initial commit. The view controller, the main storyboard, and the assets catalog, yep, those are all 3 areas that we worked in this section. Let's go back up to source control, select commit. You always need to put in a commit message before you're going to be able to commit and push. You do that in this big white box down here. It's not labeled, but that's where it goes. I already have first commit as my commit message in here. Click on the push to remote checkbox, and then click on commit all files and push. It might take a while to push up to GitHub. I'll speed up the video so you don't have to wait for me. And we successfully pushed, and we can see that all of the M's for the modified files have gone away. Also, if we take a look back inside of our view controller here, we can see that we've got no vertical blue lines on the left-hand side, just to the left of our line numbers. That's exactly what we'd expect since we just did a commit and push. All of the modified markers are gone. Everything has been committed. Everything's been pushed up to GitHub. Nice work. Keep at it, Swifter. On to the next video.